All right. Hey, welcome everyone. Chris Petrie here. We're going to create this beautiful seascape beach type scene. We're going to have a lot of fun going over all the fundamentals and basic techniques you'll need to create this painting. We'll start out right away with a sketch, where to plan out where your ocean horizon line is going to be, where your main focal point of your interest of your painting is going to be, where you might have some secondary points of interest. We're going to cover all of that in this video. We'll cover all the colors. I have my palette. You'll see my palette on camera at all times, so you'll see all the colors we're mixing as we go. You'll see all the brushes we use. So this is a painting you can absolutely create as a beginner, have a lot of fun with it, learn a lot of interesting things about putting together a watercolor painting. So let's get started. I always mention too, if you haven't subscribed and you like my videos, please subscribe on the right hand side below. You want to stay in contact with us if you find that you're really going to learn a lot from this, and it's going to help you with your watercolor painting, especially if you're just starting out. And those of you that are back and watching on a consistent basis, thanks so much for coming by. Really appreciate that. And it's great to work with everyone here together. And again, comment section of the video, if you have any questions, I'm always in the comment section saying hi to everybody and answering questions. And it's great to see everyone putting in their insights to their watercolor painting, what they're learning, tips and things that they learn as they go. So you'll see all kinds of great information in that comment section. So follow the comment section on all of my videos. A lot of very, very smart watercolor artists are on my channel, putting in good information into the comment section that everyone can learn from, and as well as just saying hi and whatever else. So let's get started, and we'll have a lot of fun. Again, lots of interest here, lots of color, and it's just a fun, beautiful, makes you feel like you're at the beach, maybe kind of relax, maybe have a beach chair, do some reading, have an umbrella, maybe go for a little swim in the water, have some fun. That's what it's about, the beautiful summertime kind of vibe to this. So let's get started. All right, we just saw the finished painting, so we're going to get started here. We'll kind of just touch on all of the main techniques and methods we're going to use here to create this beautiful ocean, seascape and beach type scene here. We're going to just have some fun with the colors, the washes, some of the details of the painting, how we're going to get to those details, how we're going to do the loose, really light washes. We'll pretty much we'll do this in the glazing technique method, which would basically be, we'll do the lights first, and then we'll build on top of the lights on our paper, and then add in our darker darks as we go. But you'll see that this is a really fun painting that we can kind of do within, half an hour to 40 minutes from start to finish, and we'll have a really fun time of it. I'll just get my paint brushes here prepped, ready to go. So if I'm just using my my standard Extreme Beginners paint brushes, the Princeton Art and Brush Company set, which is kind of like I think it's 3 flat brushes like these here. And then also we have a couple round brushes. The one that comes with the Oval 16 set, the Prang Oval 16 set, comes with a really wonderful round brush. And then I have an extra Simply Simmons number 9 round brush too. So these are the brushes that are just plenty to get this painting completed. And they're all synthetic brushes, which is really nice if you're starting out with watercolors. It's a little bit easier to paint with synthetic brushes because they don't hold as much water. So when you dip them into the water and when you're mixing your colors in your palette, they tend not to hold as much water. They don't get as drenched and waterlogged with water color paint and water, so that it makes it a little bit easier when you're going onto your painting. You're not flooding out your painting with too much water. That can be a problem sometimes when we're starting out in watercolor. Sometimes we add too much water to our paints, and then when we go to put it on our paper, it gets to be like too much water, and things start to just flood out on our papers. And so that's kind of a good part of using synthetic brushes, actually. So it kind of automatically just kind of helps you to have a little less water in the hairs of your brush. And then we always show you on our videos here how we're always checking water off on a tissue or a paper towel as we're working. I usually hold a tissue in my hand, and I take my brush and check off a little bit of water before I go in and get colors and mix colors. Depends on what part of the painting we're working on. But usually always a good thing to have a tissue or even a sponge. Sometimes I have a sponge next to my water container. So you can leave a sponge like this next to your water container. If you have like a nice water container like this, and you leave a sponge next to it, this way you can just take your brush, rinse off your brush when you're painting, and then you can tap on your sponge a little bit a couple times, and then go over to your paints and do your mixing over here. So that's always a good option too you have. I also wear an apron when I paint, so I sometimes tap my brush on my apron. So I just quickly take some paint, some water off my brush, quickly tap my brush on my apron, right on my on the front of my apron, and that's pretty much the way I'm working with my brushes and my water container and things like that. And so I know sometimes people will mention in the comment section, and thank you. If it's your first time here, welcome. I forgot to mention that. If it's your first time here, welcome. Thanks so much for joining along with us. You're going to have a lot of fun. You're going to learn watercolor here on my channel. Hopefully you're going to be subscribing on the right-hand side below on the subscribe button. Just keeps you in touch with us, and then this way you don't lose us, and you'll always see the next time you open up YouTube, you'll see a little small maybe like a small thumbnail picture of our painting in our next video in your YouTube homepage. So this way you'll know, oh yeah, Chris made a new video, let's check it out. You can click on that for our next video, because we're making sometimes 2-3 videos per week. Usually on the weekends we create our videos here. So we kind of have everything all set up now. The next thing we'll do is we usually start out with a pencil sketch. So a lot of times I'll use retractable pencils, basically really easy to use. You just click the top of your pencil like this, and you have instant fresh pencil point at the end, and you don't have to worry about putting it into a pencil sharpener or whatever else. But if you have regular office pencils or anything like that, that's fine too. You know, you put them in the electronic sharpeners, or maybe you have some of those plastic hand sharpeners. I use those too sometimes when I'm out in the field when I'm doing plein air work. But in any case, we're just going to continue here, have some fun, get a little bit of a sketch here just so that we have something to start with. We're going to do mostly a lot of painting and not as much drawing on this, because this is really like a fun approach to like doing some beach sand and a little bit of ocean and some sky. We don't really need to do a lot of detailed drawing on this. So what I'll do is I'll probably, I'll create a little bit of ocean up here on the right-hand side. And what I'll do is I'll just sort of, usually I start out, I try to divide my paper up into like divisions of like, so let's say here, I'll just make a quick mark on my tape, which is a great reason I always put masking tape around my paper when I'm painting. This way you can put some hash marks on your paper, so you can lay out the design of your painting when you're starting out, and you can put the hash marks on your tape. So what I was going to say is I'll probably just go like 2/3 up the page like this. So if we say here's thirds, so this is 1/3 here, another third here, and another third here. So if we're thinking of like the idea of cooking, you know, 1/3 cup of sugar, 1/3 cup of flour, and maybe 2/3, you know, water to mix something up. We're going to mix like some food that we're going to create a recipe. So it's kind of like that. We're making like a little bit of a recipe here on the side of our tape, just to kind of give ourselves where we're going to kind of line things up on our drawing. So I'm going 2/3 up on the page up here, or we could also look at it as if we're going 1/3 down from the top. So if I divide my paper vertically into 3 sections, 1/3, 2/3, and 3/3, then I'll say the top third is going to be sky. And you can even sometimes put notes on there if you wanted to. You could say sky there. And then this is going to be sand down here, sand dunes. So you can write notes on your tape around your painting as you're drawing and getting things laid out correctly, the way you want it, your painting to look. So that we kind of have now the basics of it for our vertical space divisions in our painting. We just remembered that we're going to have 1/3 sky up at the top and 2/3 sand dunes on the bottom portion of our painting, and that's all we really need. And then we might just say to ourselves, okay, well, we're going to put some kind of like plants that you would see along the sand dunes and things like that on our painting. So we might ask ourselves, well, where are we going to put those? Well, let's just say, let's maybe put them up here in this left-hand corner of our painting up here. So we might just put over here plants. Here, plants, and just put a little arrow there. So plants are going to be up here. And maybe we're going to keep those along the same line as the thirds that we created. So just the basic, I'm transferring over these thirds hash marks just so we have it like that. And that's pretty good. I think that's all we really need to get our pencil drawing all ready to go. So again, we said we were going to put some ocean. So let's put the ocean line here. The horizon line of the ocean. That's going to be the distant ocean horizon line there. And we'll put maybe some waves coming in from the ocean onto the beach. Then we'll have some sand, the like hard packed sand that's all wet and waterlogged from the waves coming in. That hard packed sand like that, maybe there. So maybe now we're about halfway between the bottom third and the top third with our sand. And then that should be good. Then what we'll do is maybe we're going to start to create our sand dunes. So maybe our sand dune is going to be like this, up here, like that. And then if we have our sand dune like that, maybe we'll have another sand dune coming this way, like that. Just a couple pencil lines to indicate a little bit of our sand dunes. And I think that's fine. So now we can kind of see we have our distant ocean line here. That's the horizon line of the ocean. Then we have the waves coming in this hard packed sand here, and then a little bit of the beach sand here, and the sand dunes are right here. The sand dunes are here. And then the only other thing I could imagine we might want to add, let's add just some, let's put a light insignia. You'll often see me do this in my paintings a lot. And this is an Extreme Beginner Series tutorial, so I'll always try to really put a lot of like my main methods and techniques that I use to create watercolors, the important things that are going to really be a really good benefit for everyone. So usually anytime we're creating a painting, we'll try to find out where the light source is. Sometimes your light's going to be, different. Like sometimes it's bright sunny light in your painting. Sometimes it's a cloudy day, so you might not have any real really strong shadows in your painting. Sometimes it might be that it's in the middle of the day, so the shadows might be very small because the sun's straight up overhead, so there's not a lot of long shadows. Sometimes paintings will have long shadows because it's like in the early morning or the late day where the shadows are longer because the sun is lower in the sky, so it's shining across and casting long shadows. So you'll kind of learn these things, and you'll always kind of make note of it when you're out and about in your life and you're looking at things. You try to observe nature. When you observe nature, a lot of artists will always mention this. I've heard lots of artists over the years encourage me and others to, like, we just look at nature and we kind of try to kind of observe, like, what's the sunlight doing when I'm out during my day? What do things look like? What do shadows look like? What does sunlight look like? What color is sunlight looking like in the morning or in the late afternoon? What's sunlight look like in the middle of the day? So there's all these things you can kind of just keep in mind when you're just going about everyday things and you're out and about. You can kind of just keep mental note of some of these things. Colors you see, what are colors looking like when you're driving by maybe like a farm area, some farmland. You might see different colors and go, yeah, I see those colors. They look kind of like yellow ochre, lemon yellow, green, sap green. You might kind of start picking out colors you see. Ocean, it might be beautiful blue colors. You kind of just do these type of things as an artist. So if you're just starting out and you're becoming an artist, you're going to want to just, make a little mental study of things when you're just out, casual study of things is all really. So, but the reason I say that is we will make a bit of a let's make a spotlight up here like this. And that spotlight is going to just indicate to us as we start out our painting, where's the light coming from? Well, it's a bright sunny day and the light's coming from this direction, this way, across the painting. So that'll kind of give us a little bit of a indication of, well, we kind of know light's coming from here. So we'll see some shadows on the left side of things. So if we were to make like a plant or a tree or anything like that on the sand dunes, the shadows will be over on the left side of those plants and those trees or whatever we're gonna create over here on the left side, the shadows, because the light's coming from here. So if we have some bright areas of sand where the sand looks really bright, almost like white paper, well, that'd be over on this side because the light's coming from here and it's striking on the sand dune. And then maybe over on this left side of the sand dune, it's going to be more like light, a little darker, more shade, more, less bright white paper or light kind of looking effect on your painting. So now that we have all that information here, we'll just take a quick break. We've done a lot right here. What I will do is just mention that this is more of a free type of painting where we're not going to draw everything. We'll make a few more notes on our paper. So we will take our pencil in just a minute. We'll come back. We'll just make a few more notes on our paper, and then we'll be ready to start painting. So let's have some fun. Let's get ready to paint in just a few minutes. We'll just do a few more notes with our pencil, and then we'll get right into the painting portion. All right, so now we're just going to make a few more notes, like we said, just so we have, maybe we're going to start to make some, maybe some plants and things like that up here. So we're going to make more or less our plants and things on the top of the sand dune, right up here on this area of the painting, the left quadrant. If we were to say this was maybe 4 quadrants in this painting, and you could always look at it from a standpoint of, let's see if I can do this here. So we could take our scrap paper here, and we'll just do a quick, so if this is our painting right here that we're creating, you can think of it as the painting would be 4 quadrants, and that's once we have we talked about our thirds. So we created the thirds going vertically, 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. Then when we start to build more of the main information inside the rectangle, we'll say, let's make our subject matter, the main key focus of the painting, somewhere either in one of these 4 quadrants here. Always a great design principle you can use. If you put your main subject matter in one of these 4 quadrants and highlight it there, and then have the rest of the painting sort of subdued with other minor details, you'll find that your paintings are really going to look beautiful, and that will be actually an excellent design principle you could always use if you're kind of creating things, whether you're working from photographs, books, magazine clippings, newspapers, you're working from something online, something from your phone, anything really, outdoors if you're painting outdoors. Working from nature and from being like maybe out on vacation, you're trying to maybe do a couple little quick paintings on vacation, little quick thumbnail paintings in a sketchbook or something. You're always safe to just sort of put your main subject matter in one of these 4 quadrants, and let's say on this painting we're gonna do it here. So we're gonna do most of our main subject matter here, which is going to be some plants along this sand dune, and some weeds and things like that, and grasses. So we're just kind of thinking out loud here. This is where we're going to put our main subject matter in this quadrant right here. You could also do it here, or even here. We chose this one for this painting up here. And you'll see how we're going to use that upper left-hand quadrant to make most of the kind of like focal point of the painting in this upper left-hand corner. So I'll continue with just a little bit of information with my pencil. I'm just going to do a little bit of quick sketching, like that, just to put some information on here is to know that I'm going to put my grasses and weeds over here. And then I guess along the shore, you'll notice there might be, with trees and grasses and things like that, there usually is a prevailing wind. So usually you'll see things, usually kind of the breeze and the wind is going in a certain direction. So you might make all of your grasses and weeds and things like that, and even if you have a tree in here maybe, or a bit of some leaf forms and things like that, it's kind of all swinging to the right side over here like this, because that's maybe where the general direction at this area of the shoreline where we're painting at, it might have all that kind of feel to it, that there's like a lot of wind here, and it's always usually coming from the left and going to the right like this across. So that's a good thing to remember. Maybe a few blades of grass or weeds might go the other direction, but mostly everything is sort of going in to the right in this painting. So we're going to have the wind is sort of blowing things to the right. That's a good effect to have. So things are kind of like pulling to the right on this. And I think that's good, just that little bit of a sketch of some of the plants and things we're going to make over here. And then we'll create this as we go, as we're painting. So, and then maybe also too, we'll have a little bit of maybe just some minor details down here, just to have a little bit of something down here in the right hand corner. Again, your main information we said is going to be in the upper left hand quadrant of your painting, but you will have other information, more subtle things that are going to be in other parts of the painting, like the ocean over here, some of these weeds down here, maybe some little bit of color over here. But that's really all we need. So the next thing we're going to do is just start to mix up some colors. So we try to mix our colors first. We'll try to get our main colors into our palette so that we don't have to stop in the middle of our painting and start mixing and trying to figure out what colors we're going to use. Let's get it all here first, and then just start the painting and work from what we have here on the palette, which makes it a lot easier for you, I think. So the first thing we notice is we're going to use some yellows and golds, oranges and yellows with some brown. So I just try to get some warm colors, the sand colors. I rinse off my brush. I use a tissue to dry off my brush a little bit before I go into the paint. So I'll use some yellow there. If you have to spritz, a lot of times I use a spritzer bottle. Here, spray bottle. And just make sure I keep my paints moist as we're working. And then we're going to have some definite blue for the ocean colors. Blue there. A little bit of green mixed in there isn't going to hurt. So we have some blue. Okay, so we have some different bits of darker blue like this here. Some lighter blue like that. Maybe we'll even add in some green, some darker kind of bluish green there. And then when we have that, we're looking good. We also need some greens for our plants. So we're going to go with the light and dark green over here. Light and dark green mixed together with some burnt umber to kind of gray it down a little bit, make it like an olivey green in some areas. Some more yellow over here. So we use some lemon yellow with our green over here to make a little bit of a lighter green, more of a warmer, sunnier green there, and then some more bluish green over here for some of the darker greens. And again, a little bit of burnt umber in there just to make this a little bit more like an olivey type of green. That might look really nice. And again, we have yellow. I'll rinse off my brush. Yellow and orange, like that. So I think this is pretty much going to be a good start with our colors. And we can also, I would say, we could go with really a bit of I would say some purple here too. With that blue, we can mix some purple up here. And then also, let's make a little bit of black up here. I'll put it right up here in the top of my tray, like that. Sometimes I'll do that because black is very dark, so I don't want to have too much there. But we'll use a little bit of that black too to mix in various areas here. But we'll see how that goes. But we want to definitely get some darker, really, really beautiful darks in our painting as well. Not much, but some. So next thing we'll do is we'll go to our larger flat brush. So you can see how we were basically mixing our colors with this 1 inch or 5/8 inch brush, flat brush, and now we're going to go to a 1 inch, which is again the Princeton Art and Brush Company. Incidentally, all of my art supplies are down below in the comment section below. If you click on that, it's usually you have to click the word more, and you'll see more information, and then you'll see all of the links to all of the art supplies that I use, that I personally use myself, which are going to perform great for you. So if you do want to shop around and pick up some art supplies, you'll have tons of lists of things down below to peruse through. So we're going to use again the little bit of a larger 1 inch brush to get some water on this, some clean water. Now the thing I mentioned is, since we've been mixing our colors here on our palette to get everything started so that we have plenty of paint to pretty much get most of the painting done, when I did that and I was cleaning off my brush, this water got really, really murky and muddy looking. So that's the thing where now we're going to empty our bucket and get fresh, clean water, so that when we add some water to our paper now, our watercolor paper, that's going to be crystal clear water like that. And we'll have that to our right. And I'll take my 1 inch brush, and what I'll do is we'll dampen the paper up here where the sky is. Over here too a little bit. We just want to dampen the paper. Nothing, we don't want to flood the paper out with too much. We just dampen the paper there. And as well, let's dampen the paper where the sand dunes are. And that's pretty much the lower half of the painting. So what we're going to do is, I really don't have I'm just doing this by feel. I'm just going to create this painting without I'm not using anything for reference. I'm just going with a real simple composition, a couple sand dunes, some water, sky, and we'll do some plantings on the sand dunes. So please use this as your reference. So in the beginning of the video, you can just maybe hit pause on the beginning of the video when you're going to create your painting, and just leave your electronic device, whether it's an iPad, an iPhone, a home computer, a TV, whatever it is you're using. Just hit pause in the beginning when I show the finished painting, and just work right from that. Because like I said, we really didn't do much drawing or pencil drawing here, so you don't need to get too focused with that. Okay, so now we have all our colors already mixed up. Let's just start going in and getting some washes in the sky. And when I do this, I just tap some fresh, clean water on there. And look how good that looks. We just let it flow on down. Sky's usually darker up top. And then as it flows down the paper, you could put a little bit there in the water, just a little bit of that sky color through here, like that. And that's all you have to do. And that's pretty much, that's your sky wash, basically. Over here, you bring it down into the plants, we're going to put some plants in here, and weeds and grasses and things. So that's all you have to do there. And then you could add a little touch of some gold, yellow, a little bit of touch of that in the sky, not too much. I would just add a very, very little bit. And the reason I do that is because we're going to have all that warm sand colors and things in the bottom of the painting. So if we can just interject a little bit into the top of the painting, like that. But you have to do it very fast. You can't wait more than a minute or two. That's one of the challenges of watercolor. We have to work kind of fast with watercolor. I have to admit, it is sometimes challenging that way. So the main key is to get your first bit of clean, fresh, crystal clear water onto your paper. Then you get some of your blue sky wash on there, and then right away grab just a little tiny bit of the golden colors, the browns, the oranges, the yellows, and just a tiny bit into your sky, so this way the colors all harmonize together in the painting. Because now we're going to come down here and get more of these sand colors like that, and just put some of those on the paper. So you'll see we do that, and this is where you just have fun. You use your crystal clear water with some of your sand colors, and you just do some, just brush in some wash. This is like, glazing technique, which is you're just getting some colors on here, some light washes, nothing too dark. Keep it very light. If you have to, if you find that your sand looks too dark, you can always take a little bit of tissues or paper towels and just quick lift up a little bit if you think you've added too dark a color. But I think that's okay. And we also add a little blue in here too. We want to have a little bit of blue up here, a little bit of blue in the sand, right? A little bit of indications of some blue sky color in the sand, kind of affecting the wash. And that is pretty good. And we left some white paper over here, so the sunlight's coming this way. So maybe over here we left some white paper. And a few other spots too. There might be a little bit lighter areas where we didn't put too much paint on there. But as you can see now, we've got lots of light, very, very light washes on this paper, and that's what we wanted to do. We didn't want to start the painting out with anything dark. We wanted to go very light, like that. You might even put in a little bit of some splashes. So I'll just do a little bit of splashing with my my brush. I just put a little bit of paint on there and just do a couple taps with the brush, and that gives us the feeling of sand. You can do a little more of that later. Right now when you do that, you'll notice your paper's already damp and wet from putting on washes. So when you do some tapping like this, it kind of fades out the splashes. And that's good too, because it does give a subtle feeling of like texture to the bottom of the painting. And up here too, you could add a little bit like that. Okay, that's it. Now we let this dry. So now we take a break, and you'll notice I do take breaks, and that's kind of natural for watercolor, because now's the break point here where we need to break so that this can dry. Our washes here are very, very light washes with crystal clear water, little touches of color, not too much. Get it onto our paper. We've dampened our paper first with crystal clear water again. And then we let this dry 100%. You can blow dry this at this point, or if you want to, you can always let it dry for like an hour or two, maybe, and that should be fine. When you come back in an hour or two, it would be dry enough that you can start painting over the top with your second glazing. So again, we're using the glazing technique. You'll hear me talk about that all the time. I have my book down below in the description. A link to Amazon to purchase a book if you want to purchase my watercolor book. It's covers all of your main techniques of watercolor, basically two main techniques, glazing technique and the alla prima technique, and I use those two all the time on my videos here. So if you're buying my book, you're going to be keyed in to all of the really basic methods and techniques that I'm using all the time here on my channel. So you'll just have more reinforcement of that's what we're using here, and when you're getting more familiar with that process, it'll be easier for you to work along with our videos here. So that'll be a lot of a help to you if you're working from my book as well as working on the videos here, because it's kind of both seamless. They tie in together perfectly with each other. Okay, let's let this dry. So you can, again, use a blow dryer or let it dry a couple hours, maybe an hour, depends, but you'll check it. Once you see it looks pretty dry and there's no sheen, there's no like glistening of the paper, that means it's pretty much dry. So if you don't see any kind of like glossiness to your paper, that means the water is pretty much dry. But another way you can also tell is that the paper is not as buckled. So usually when you're adding a lot of water to your painting, your paper is going to buckle and do a lot of like hills and valleys all over your paper. Usually once it's dry, it does tend to go flat again and become more flat like it was originally when you started your painting. So that's always a good indication too. If your pages, your watercolor paper is dry, it's more flat again. It doesn't have all those hills and valleys in it. When you put your washes on and you dampen your paper and put what we did here, we put our light washes on over the top of our damp paper, you'll notice, yeah, that paper is going to get buckled. It's going to get buckled, and you're not going to, obviously we don't want to start painting over the top of buckled paper. That's all hills and valleys, because then when you start to create washes on that, the paint is going to run and go in different directions, and that can be a real big issue. So that's why I always say, please at this point, let your painting dry for an hour or two, or if you want to use a blow dryer, it maybe takes 5 minutes and you can start working again. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my blow dryer next, and so we can get started quickly and get on to the next wash, the next glazing over the top of this light wash we did. Be right back. All right, so now we're coming back. I think I took about a 45-minute break, and that was enough time that the paper has dried actually quite substantially. So there's no wetness or dampness on the top of the paper. There might be a little bit of dampness in the paper fibers of the paper, a little tiny bit. The buckling has subsided substantially, so it's almost pretty much back to where it was when I first started. Not perfectly flat, but it does have a tiny little bit of, little bit of like a, not a perfectly flat surface, but pretty much, again, almost the way we started with the paper being like flat. And this is, this paper is actually block paper. So it's like paper that's been, all the sheets are glued together on the edges, around the edges of the paper, so that when you wet the paper and then when it starts to dry, it tightens back up like a drum skin, really, really tight. So that's one great thing about using block paper. It's better than, I think, sheets that you peel off when you're creating watercolors. I think it's better to use block paper. I tend to use that more or less most of the time, except when I'm doing larger paintings. Then I buy like full sheets of paper, but then I tape it down really good. But in any case, we are ready to start. I did want to actually just kind of make I wanted to make a quick note on what we're going to do with the plantings on the top of the dune and along the bottom of the sand beach here, and this portion of the painting. There's a good effect you can use, which is kind of like the idea of creating a few like points of interest that are a little more detailed that you might have when, like, let's say we're going to do the sand dune here. Maybe there's a couple points of interest where you make some more detailed plantings on the top of the sand dune, like here. Maybe another one here where you have some more like detailed brush strokes and focal points. And then surrounding these areas, then you can do more loose and fun type brush strokes that are not as like detailed. So that's a really fun concept to use when you're creating watercolors, especially when you're doing like landscapes or seascapes, things like this. But you can use it really with any, it doesn't matter what subject matter you are creating. You can kind of use the idea of looser, less detailed components, and then the punctuation of more sharper, detailed, where you spend a little more time doing more of the detailed, refined passages in your painting like that, so that you have some really loose, free kind of areas like that, and then maybe you have some more detailed parts to your painting. So that's the idea that we're going to use, the concept we're going to use here when we do our plantings up here on the sand dune and around the painting. So that's kind of the game plan we're going to have. So the first thing I'll do is, since we took a break for about an hour, so that means this palette got a little bit, the paint dried in our palette, so I'll just do a little bit of activation with the spritzer bottle. And I'll do another quick spray on top of the paints, and we'll be ready to go. We're going to be using the same colors again. We'll go back to a smaller brush. I think this time we'll actually, maybe we'll go with a round brush at this point. So we'll use our number 9, Simply Simmons number 9 round brush. But actually, before we do that, let's block in a little bit of larger wash with our smaller flat brush, 5/8 inch flat brush here. So let's get some of that darker green. So you can see we have the darker green over here, even a little bit of blue in there. Brown, blue, green. Definitely make like a darker green here like this. And what I'll do is I'll load up my brush with some green. Maybe I'll take a little bit of that paint off like that. And then I'll start to maybe just scrub around. And like I said before, let's get some really kind of free looking, maybe we'll do some yellow ochre, like some of that, you know, orange and yellow, just to have a little bit of like that. And I wouldn't fill anything in. I wouldn't fill anything in like large blocks of color. I would leave spaces like that. I would leave spaces between things. I wouldn't try to block it all in and fill it all in. And then what we can do is rinse our brush off, maybe get a little more of the yellow and gold here. Up here there might be some more yellow and gold like that. You can do a couple splashes like that onto the paper, around the paper a little bit like that. A little bit of orange, maybe we'll put a little bit of orange in there. And then maybe a little bit of that black for some shadows. So you can add a little tiny bit of black here and there. Just a little bit of black paint infused into the washes that you've just put in. Maybe some blue, some purple. And what that does is that just kind of like tantalizes the eyes when we're looking at the painting, that we see some darks in there. So now this is the portion of the painting where we're doing those light, kind of carefree areas of wash that are not really too much detail. And again, you can do some more splashing if you want. I wouldn't get too much splashing going on, just enough that you have some in there. And then I'll add a little more black up here, so we have a little more black to work with. But I put that up here in this very tippy top of the corner of my palette just to remind me, Chris, don't use too much of that, because that can really cause a problem if I'm adding too much of that into the painting. Like this. Then you can always do some fingernail scrapes like this. And that's once your paint has dried a little bit. You can do that. And we're going to keep this again very loose, this painting. Let's a little more orange and yellow, like that. So essentially we've made kind of like quite a bit of some really loose passages over here. And then now what we'll do is we'll go with our Simply Simmons number 9 round brush. This is a really fun brush. You can find this online. I think I have this in the link below. But if it's not there, it's like a pearl looking finish on this. So it's a Simply Simmons number 9 round brush, synthetic round, and it's got that pearl. It almost looks like pearl, and it's really nice. Great brush. I've had this for a long time. It's been a great brush. I don't think I've ever had to replace it any time, so it's always been. So now I'll start to do a few of these, a couple of these brush strokes here with the Simply Simmons, like that. A couple of these. There might be a couple more weeds like this. So I'm going to try to keep this pretty loose, pretty free. I'm going to go again with some more dark green paint, more thicker paint now. So now as we're doing these darker washes on this painting, they're going to be less water, more paint. So that's all we have to remember. We're not using as much water. A little bit of orange into that green. Maybe even a little bit of blue. Make it a little bit darker. A little bit of red in there too, maybe. And we'll do some more. Now we're going to do some really interesting, maybe some interesting, really fine. This would be the real detailed portion right now, like this here. That's going to be, you can kind of see how that's a little more detailed here, right? We have that there. And then we'll do another bit here. And these are kind of like some more pointier type shapes for these. Like that. Okay. So you have 1, 2, maybe another one over here. Like that. And I think that's all we really need. I think this is pretty good. We don't want to go overboard here with too many details up here. And then again, I might go with a little more lighter yellow and the lighter green. So that's kind of like that really light yellowy green, which is the light green and the yellow here, and then some of the orange and brown over here. And we'll do a little more, a little bit of, again, more of that free kind of flowing bit of brush strokes, so that we're not. And then we'll take some of that dark green too, and let's just go right out of the picture here. So we're going to maybe a little bit of blue to make it a little darker over here. Now the sunlight's coming this way, so the shadows will be over here, like that. And I think the more free and the more free you make it, and light-hearted and fun like this, with those little punctuations of some more detailed passages, that's going to look better. So your eyes rest as you look at the more free-looking brush strokes, and then your eye focuses in and you see some, there's some real fine detail there I see, and your eye and your mind thinks, that's really interesting. Wow, what's that there? That's a really interesting, very detailed plant. Then your eye rests and you kind of meander around the painting with some lighter, freer type brush strokes like that. So I think that's good. So that's the top of the dune. We will maybe use a little more of a fine pointed brush to get some more weeds and grasses, but right now let's leave that as that is. And always remember, as you're painting, never get worried if you think something looks really like lopsided or like something looks off in your painting. You always have to remember, as you're painting and working throughout the entire painting, everything has to be completed once you make your judgment and say, okay, now I'm going to step back and look at it and go, yes, that looks really good, or I should have did this better, or whatever you, when you critique your own paintings and you're actually doing, in that process, the main thing is please finish your painting out all the way through, because sometimes you could step back from your painting right now and look at this, and you might think, that doesn't look good at all, it's not coming out good, and then, and I would just mention that when you're halfway through a painting, you can't really look at it and try to think of it as if it looks good or not. You can't ask yourself that question when you're halfway through a painting and say, does this look good or not? We want to look at the painting as once it's completed, for the most part, like 95% complete or 90% complete, then we can step back and look at it. Does that make sense? So that here, yeah, I've done a bunch of work right here. It looks lopsided. It looks funny looking because there's nothing else really too much going on around the rest of the painting. So that's why this might not look so good right now. And you might have that same issue where you paint this area of your painting and you think, it doesn't look good. That's not the question. The question is, always wait till you're finished with all of the passages and all of the parts of your painting. Once those are all complete, everything to the end, then you can step back and look at it and say, all right, what could be better? Do I like this part, that part, whatever, So always remember, finish out your paintings. Don't stop halfway through it and get frustrated with it, because that's used to happen to me all the time when I first started watercolor painting. Or, I'd get like a quarter way through or halfway through my painting and I would just look at it and go, this doesn't look good. It's not, And then now I've realized over many, many years of painting that we have to finish our paintings out. No matter whether we think they're good, starting good or not, we just keep working through it, keep completing all of the parts of the painting, and then when it's all completed, then we look at it and say, how does it look at that point? All right, so that's really the kind of gist of things. Now, again, I mentioned that we are going to use a finer point brush, but before we do that and get more details up here, let's keep working around the painting. So I think I will start on the water up here. Now, the thing here with my water up on this right-hand side here is I have, again, kind of muddy looking, murky water. I'd rather have a clear, really beautiful blue color of water up here, so I'm going to empty my water bucket one more time. That might be the last time I have to empty the water bucket, but I will do that to get some crystal clear water, and then I can mix some more of my blue paints here. So let's get right into the blue here. So we have plenty of blue there. Then we want a little darker blue up here with some green for the distant part of the water. So let's do that, and I'll just start getting in some like this. You can kind of see how I didn't make it just one straight line and go across. I just wanted to make sure I leave it a little bit, the edges of this ocean here, I want to leave those a little bit broken, so I don't want all of them to look, I just don't want a whole stripe of color going across. Then what I can do is rinse off my brush, take a little bit of water off the brush. Let me get a fresh Okay, so I have some fresh clean water. I rinse my brush off with the fresh clean water, tap off some of that water, and then I can take this and slowly work this like this. Dip in with a little more water. And if you slowly kind of that's going to be a more interesting look if you can kind of break it up and make it look a little bit like it's just not one line of color. Then we might go in with some of this green like this, a little bit of yellow maybe. And this is where I start to mix in a little bit of the greenish color as we're coming closer to the shoreline here. A little bit of gold color too. The orange and the brown, just we have sand here. Like that. Maybe a little more blue over here. Maybe you will blend in this across here a little more if you want to. See what looks good. Okay. All right, now I think we can work down here a little bit. Let's get some of this, there's some more grass and weeds and things over here. I'll just take a little bit of that green, like that. A little bit of the lighter green, like this. A couple of little bits of, like that. A little bit of the brown and gold in there too. And the orange. Mix around the colors a little bit. Couple of brush strokes this way here. Like that. Maybe we have a little bit of blue for shadowing over here. Here and there, a little bit of shadowing. A little bit of purple for shadowing too. Now, maybe at this point in time, you can take your some paper towel. If you need some a little bit of clean areas on your palette to mix up some additional colors that you want to add to your painting, you could take a little bit of your paper towel and maybe you section off a little bit. Maybe over here you might say, all right, I'm going to take a little bit of this section here and just give myself a little bit of an area that I can mix a little more color. I might put some purple in here. Purple is a great shadow color for cool shadows. So that's why I'll put a little bit of purple in there, and then I'll just come over here and add some purple for some shadowing here. Like this. And I'll put it here and there. I won't put it everywhere. Like that, just a little touch of that. Maybe a little bit too in the painting areas up here where we created those light washes of color. And then down here too, some purple. Like this. A little bit of splashes there. You can always lift up a little bit of the splashes if you want. Like that. But we just definitely wanted to get in some of that purple. I wouldn't fill everything in with too much shadowing because you want to see some of that bright white paper, kind of like as if sunlight is kind of going and filtering into this area where the weeds are and these plantings and these bits of greenery along the sand dune here. So now that you have that, you have a little bit of a counterbalance down here. Like this. A couple of darker bits of weeds there like that. You have maybe some burnt umber or some of the brown, let's say, and then some blue and brown and a little bit of green, dark green, a little bit of water, maybe a little more brown, a little more, maybe yes, that should be good. And then we can just do a little bit of sand texture like that, just around here, the very, very closest bottom portion of the painting where there's the sand, like that. So that's good. That looks good. Makes it kind of feel like there's some grittiness to the foreground here. You can blot up a few spots if you want to, here and there, but I think that looks fine. And we're almost, I think, complete. The only thing we'll need to do now is a couple more really nice finishing touches with some our needlepoint brush. I always use my needlepoint brush for doing the final weeds and grasses and things here. So I'll use some of that dark mix that we had there with some green. So some of the, I guess that was brown and blue, and then maybe some dark green and light green here, maybe a little bit of orange, like that. So we get a good mixture of kind of like a grayish color. And then we just take our needlepoint brush and we just do some very light, like this. Just a few, things like this, not too many. It looks much better if we can just add a few details like that. like this. And then a few more over here. Obviously, on this area here, we want to make this important too. This is like part of the painting, that we want to have some interest up here, maybe a little bit of interest down here to just give some variety for the person that's looking at the painting, and they might be saying to themselves, oh, where else can I look around in the painting? They might look up here first. That's your main focal point. Then you come down over here, you say, all right, yeah, there's some more bits of grass and things like that. You might have a few more bits of grass here in the foreground, you'll see, like that. And I think that's it. That is fine. You could do a touch of, again, some more purple. Over here, you can take this and maybe clean out another section again like that. Add some purple in there like that, with a little bit of that maybe grayish color, so it's a little bit gray down, the purple. But then you might have a little bit of, we might have a little bit of the shadowing here from some of the grasses and things like that. You add a few of these in, these shadows to these weeds and things, and just like that, a few of these just to give some more interest to the painting. And that's fine. If you want to, you can add maybe a little more sand texture. A little more texture here, possibly just a tiny more bit of texture maybe up here on the sand dune. Like that, maybe over here a little bit. And then I think we have a really good finished product here. And then what we can do is we can, at the beginning of the video, you'll see this finished painting. I'm hoping you're going to work from that. So I'm hoping you give me a thumbs up if you like this video. If you've enjoyed the process of creating this wonderful beach scene here with sand dunes and the basic concept of how to put this all together, start to finish. I'm hoping you'll subscribe too if you haven't subscribed before. Especially, this is the Extreme Beginner Series video. So what we do is we just try to really start out with the fundamentals of watercolor, some of the basic concepts that you can use, and we change those up as we go. Every painting's kind of a little different. So here we're doing the seascape style painting, so with sand dunes and water and ocean and weeds and grass, all this kind of fun stuff. This is, you know, maybe in a couple weeks we're going to do something like architecture, or maybe we'll create some flowers or things like this. So you're always going to see different subject matter, but we will kind of try to put those fundamentals into the videos as we go, so that you can kind of just get those like under your belt, and then you'll have that, and you can just, like the glazing technique we used here, for the most part we used lots of water, and then our darker washes after everything dries on that first glazing of light wash. So that's the glazing technique. So we pretty much covered that here, and I'm hoping you'll come back and see us again and work along with us, and we'll see you soon, and happy painting, everyone.